Tombstone made legends out of gunfights and dust, but the real story begins after the smoke clears, when time loads its own chamber. Wyatt wanted peace. Doc was already dying. Morgan never got to grow old. And the actors who brought them to life? They fought their own battles too. Illness, loss, and the quiet weight of years. Today we return to Tombstone. Not to remember the bullets that made history, but to reckon with the scars that only time could leave behind. Wyatt Earp arrives in Tombstone not as a hero, but as a man in retreat, someone who has already paid the price of violence and wants nothing more to do with it. Kurt Russell, born March 17, 1951, was 42 years old when Tombstone was released in 1993. He shaped Wyatt into something rarer than a frontier legend, a reluctant one. His Wyatt craves prosperity, stillness, and distance from the badge, and the film earns its power by watching that distance slowly collapse. Russell plays him with a compressed stillness that makes the eventual eruption feel almost geological. The restraint is the performance. When Wyatt finally unleashes, it doesn't feel triumphant. It feels like something in him has permanently sealed shut. In 2026, Russell turns 75, carrying one of Hollywood's most quietly remarkable careers. From Disney child roles to John Carpenter's Escape from New York, The Thing, and Big Trouble in Little China, he built a legacy on controlled magnetic screen presence. Silkwood, Backdraft, Miracle, The Hateful Eight, the Fast and Furious franchise, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 as Ego all followed. His decades-long partnership with Goldie Hawn became one of Hollywood's most enduring love stories. Wyatt Earp endures because Russell made frontier justice feel reluctant, costly, and devastating once fully awakened. Doc Holliday is the performance Tombstone is remembered by. A dying man who turns wit, loyalty, and borrowed time into the film's most luminous soul. Val Kilmer, born December 31, 1959, was 33 when the film opened in 1993. He made Doc feel simultaneously elegant and haunted, a figure already dissolving at the edges while the world still finds him the most dangerous man in the room. The genius of his portrayal lies in the contradiction, fragile in body, lethal in mind. Devoted to Wyatt with a purity that makes everyone else's motives seem small. Kilmer passed away on April 1, 2025, at the age of 65, after years shaped by throat cancer that had altered his voice and drawn him further from the public eye. That private battle makes Doc's physical frailty feel retrospectively devastating. Before and after Tombstone, Kilmer built a singular career. Top Gun, The Doors, Heat, Batman Forever, The Saint, and returned in Top Gun Maverick in what became one of the most emotionally charged scenes of his final years. For many who love cinema, Doc Holliday remains the role that defined him completely. Doc endures because Kilmer made a dying man feel playful, ferocious, loyal, and heartbreakingly present. Curly Bill Brocious doesn't terrorize Tombstone through rage, he does it through pleasure. He is the outlaw who has discovered that violence is more effective when it wears a grin. Powers Boothe, born June 1, 1948, was 45 years old when Tombstone opened in 1993. He gave Curly Bill a loose, almost jovial menace that made him far more unsettling than any screaming villain could be. He leads the cowboys not with fury, but with amusement, and that laughter is the most frightening thing about him. Boothe died on May 14, 2017, at 68, from complications related to pancreatic cancer, taking with him one of Hollywood's most commanding voices of darkness. Long before Tombstone, he had won an Emmy for Guyana Tragedy, the story of Jim Jones, then carved his authority across Southern Comfort, Red Dawn, Deadwood, 24, Sin City, Nashville, and Marvel's Agents of Sheen. Hiled in every role, he brought the same quality, the sense that his character understood the room and owned it without effort. Curly Bill endures because Boothe made evil feel relaxed, amused, and wholly comfortable in its own skin. Morgan Earp is the heart Tombstone cannot afford to keep. His warmth is the measure of everything the violence will eventually cost, and his loss is what transforms Wyatt's restraint into something darker and total. Bill Paxton, born May 17, 1955, was 38 when Tombstone opened in 1993. He gave Morgan an open, almost boyish sincerity that set him apart from the harder men surrounding him. Morgan still believes justice can be clean. He still expects the story to be fair. That belief is precisely what makes his fate so devastating. Paxton died on February 25, 2017, at 61, following complications from surgery. His loss struck deeply because he had spent decades making characters feel genuinely alive, nervous, funny, tender, and human in ways that outlasted any single film. Before and after Tombstone, he left indelible marks in Aliens, Near Dark, True Lies, Apollo 13, Twister, Titanic, Frailty, and Big Love, earning admiration as both a performer and filmmaker of real instinct. Morgan Earp endures because Paxton made innocence feel courageous, breakable, and impossible to protect once the guns found it. Virgil Earp carries the law not as a weapon, but as a responsibility. The older brother who cannot allow himself the luxury of pretending that good men looking away will make a violent town safe. Sam Elliott, born August 9, 1944, was 49 when Tombstone opened in 1993. He gave Virgil a deliberate, weathered moral gravity that made him feel distinct from Wyatt's mythic intensity. Virgil believes the badge still holds meaning, even in a place where corruption and gunfire have turned law into something almost naive. That conviction costs him everything, and Elliott makes sure we feel the weight of every word before the damage arrives. In 2026, Elliott turns 82, having built one of the defining presences in American film and television. From Lifeguard and Mask through Roadhouse, The Big Lebowski, We Were Soldiers, The Hero, the series 1883, and an Oscar-nominated turn in A Star Is Born. His career has always been rooted in restraint, moral texture, and hard-earned soul. Virgil Earp endures because Elliott made duty feel worn through the bone, noble enough to stand on, heavy enough to bow a man without quite breaking him. Josephine Marcus enters Tombstone like a window thrown open. Color and air in a town choking on old loyalties, gun smoke, and the dust of men too damaged to imagine anything different. Dana Delany, born March 13, 1956, was 37 when the film opened in 1993. She gave Josephine a modern, self-possessed spark that set her apart from everyone else caught inside the town's violence. Josephine is not simply Wyatt's escape. She is possibility itself. She is performance, freedom, and the future he might still reach if survival allows it. In 2026, Delany turns 70 after a career built on intelligence, complexity, and female characters who refuse to simplify themselves. Before Tombstone, she had already won major acclaim and Emmy Awards for China Beach. Afterward came Desperate Housewives, Body of Proof, Hand of God, and beloved voice work as Lois Lane across DC Animation. Josephine Marcus endures because Delany made independence feel romantic, bold, and entirely beyond Wyatt's power to ignore. The one thing in Tombstone that the past could not claim. Johnny Ringo is the outlaw who has read too many books and found no comfort in any of them. His intellect doesn't redeem him. It only makes the emptiness inside him more visible. more frightening. Michael Biehn, born July 31, 1956, was 37 when Tombstone opened in 1993. He gave Ringo a cold, coiled intensity that separated him immediately from the louder, simpler cowboys around him. Ringo is educated, volatile, and quietly drawn toward destruction as though it's the only answer to a question he can't stop asking. That is why his duel with Doc Holliday cuts so deep. They mirror each other, wit, skill, decay, and a death wish. But Doc still has something to live for, while Ringo has already given up looking. In 2026, Biehn turns 70, and his work remains essential to genre cinema. Long before Ringo, he became iconic through James Cameron's The Terminator, Aliens, and The Abyss. Men cornered by impossible forces, but never without nerve. His later career moved through independent projects, television, and a return to franchise visibility through The Mandalorian. Johnny Ringo endures because Biehn made danger feel educated, wounded, and already at peace with its own ending. Henry Hooker is the moment Tombstone bows to its own cinematic lineage. When this powerful rancher rides into the story, the film briefly becomes something larger, a conversation between old Hollywood and the frontier myth it helped build. Charlton Heston, born October 4, 1923, was nearly 70 years old when Tombstone opened in 1993. His presence transformed Hooker's relatively brief role into something ceremonial. When he chooses to shelter the Earps, the conflict shifts in scale. It stops feeling like a street dispute and starts feeling like a verdict on what kind of men will actually hold their ground. Heston died on April 5, 2008, at 84, after years affected by Alzheimer's disease, closing one of the most monumental careers in American film history. The Ten Commandments, Ben-Hur, El Cid, Planet of the Apes. He had spent decades embodying moral force on a grand, mythic scale. His appearance in Tombstone carries all of that history into a few quiet minutes. Henry Hooker endures because Charlton Heston brought the gravity of an entire cinematic era into the room simply by being in it. Ike Clanton is what cowardice looks like when it is learned to make noise. He shouts louder than anyone, provokes more than anyone, and wears the cowboy's swagger like armor, until the moment real courage is required and the armor turns to air. Stephen Lang, born July 11, 1952, was 41 when Tombstone opened in 1993. He made Ike deeply uncomfortable to watch precisely because Lang never lets the bluster become likable. Beneath every threat and every drink, the fear is always visible, and that fear is what makes him genuinely dangerous. Humiliated men, Lang reminds us, can still get people killed. In 2026, Lang turns 74, and his career has only deepened in force and range. He became globally recognized as Colonel Quaritch across James Cameron's Avatar franchise and delivered intense, memorable work in Don't Breathe, Gods and Generals, Manhunter, and significant stage productions that showcased the full physical and emotional scale of his craft. Ike Clanton endures because Lang made hollow bravado feel loud, pathetic, and still capable of pulling a trigger. Big-Nose Kate has lived close enough to death to know it by name, and still she cannot pull herself free of the man already walking toward it. Joanna Pacuła, born January 2, 1957, was 36 when Tombstone opened in 1993. She gave Kate a battle-hardened glamour that made her far more than a jealous companion. Kate's anger, desire, and sorrow all flow from the same source, loving someone who is already halfway gone and knowing it with absolute clarity. Pacuła plays her with a fierce, exhausted elegance, letting the audience feel every year Kate has spent holding on to what cannot be held. In 2026, Pacuła turns 69 after a career that opened with international attention through Gorky Park and continued through film and television work that consistently drew on her mystery, elegance, and emotional edge. Her path through Hollywood became quieter than some of her Tombstone co-stars, but Kate remains one of those performances that gives the entire legend its emotional shadow and its human ache. Big Nose Kate endures because Pacuła made frontier love feel jealous, loyal, and bruised by the knowledge that it was never going to be enough. Sherman McMasters is the proof that not every man in a red sash has surrendered his conscience entirely. He is the outlaw who still has enough of himself left to choose a different road, and who understands that road will not be safe. Michael Rooker, born April 6, 1955, was 38 when Tombstone opened in 1993. He brought McMasters the particular hardness of someone who has seen too much to romanticize morality, but not quite enough to abandon it. His decision to ride with Wyatt is not sentimental. It is difficult, dangerous, and paid for in full. In 2026, Rooker turns 71, and his career has become a gallery of bold, unpredictable character work. He first stunned audiences in Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, then built steadily through Days of Thunder, JFK, and The Walking Dead's Merle Dixon, before finding unexpected tenderness as Yondu in Guardians of the Galaxy, a role that turned roughness into genuine heartbreak. Sherman McMasters endures because Rooker made redemption feel earned through dirt, risk, and the kind of quiet courage that never announces itself. Billy Clanton wants the reputation of a dangerous man before he has the years to understand what becoming one actually requires. That gap between swagger and wisdom is exactly what makes him tragic. Thomas Hayden Church, born June 17, 1960, was 33 when Tombstone opened in 1993. He gave Billy a reckless, combustible energy that helped make the Cowboys feel volatile rather than mythic. Billy isn't calculating like Ringo or commanding like Curly Bill. He's impulsive and hungry to prove himself in a world where that hunger usually ends at the wrong end of a gun. In 2026, Church turns 66, and his career grew into something far larger than this early Western appearance. He became beloved from Wings, earned an Oscar nomination and major acclaim for Sideways, then brought the Sandman to life in Spider-Man 3 and Spider-Man: No Way Home. His later work revealed a dry, bruised humanity that, in retrospect, makes Billy more interesting, a glimpse of what Church could do before anyone knew to look. Billy Clanton endures because Church made young bravado feel foolish, recognizably human, and fatally short on time. The gunfights ended, the dust settled, and then time began its quieter work. Tombstone gave cinema its legends, the lines, the images, the walks into danger that never lose their power. But behind each of those figures stood a real person navigating illness, loss, reinvention, and the ordinary passage of years that no myth can slow. Some of those actors are still here, shaped and weathered by everything that followed. Others left before their stories felt finished. Yet every time Doc raises a glass with that ruined smile, or Wyatt walks into the fire knowing exactly what it will cost, the film refuses to be only history. It insists on feeling alive. If this journey back to that dusty street meant something to you, stay with Rewind Lost Stars, where the stories behind the screen are always worth telling.